Hi everybody, this is Tom from Rocket Restorations, and today we have another cop car. So I did a road trip video this summer when we went back to Mopers the Park, and I did a little blurb on this one back then. But I thought I'd do its own video because this thing is freaking awesome. It is a 1964 Dodge 880, and it's an ex-California Highway Patrol car. See, black, white doors, dual spotlights. I'll go over what all that stuff is in a minute. First, I want to give you a little background on what the Dodge 880 is. So, in '62, Dodge in Plymouth, I guess the head of Chrysler at the time, overheard at they were, I'm sure, loaded because it was the 60s or late 50s, that GM was downsizing their entire line for 1962. So he went back to the stylist and basically told them that all of the cars needed to be downsized. And that ended up being the 1962 Plymouth B-body line and the 1962 Dodge line. It was the Dodge Dart on the Dodge side and the Fury Belvedere Savoy on the Plymouth line. And 62 was kind of a weird year for Plymouth because the Virgil Exner, who did all the Ford look stuff, all those gorgeous Finn cars, you can see there's one right here, 1960. It's an absolute masterpiece. And when they started designing the 62 cars, they were based on a full-size car, and when they shrunk them down, they were, well, ugly. So when they revealed the cars in 1962 to the dealers in the fall of 61, they kind of panicked because the Dodge Plymouth dealers, this was not the days where gas was cheap. Horsepower, everybody wanted horsepower, everybody wanted length. They've been teaching their customers for 40-50 years that bigger was better, and bigger was more expensive, and bigger was more luxurious. And when Dodge and Plymouth downsized, especially Dodge, they didn't have a full-size car to sell. That was it. They had the Lancer in 62, which was the compact car, and then they had the mid-size Dart line, which was Dart, the Player 500, but they did not have a full-size car to sell, and the dealers basically panicked. It did not work out well. So basically what they did is they had to do a stopgap measure because the dealers almost revolted against them. And basically what they did is they took a 1962 Chrysler. Here's a 1962 Chrysler. They called this one the plucked chicken because it looked like a 61, but without fins. It looked like the fins were plucked off like a chicken. Get it? Yeah. So this is a 1962 Chrysler. So basically what they did for the 62 880 is they took the back half of this car, the two-door and the four-door, and basically used the same shell as the Chrysler, but put a 1961 Dodge on it, which here's a picture of what the 1961 Dodge looked like. Again, not the prettiest thing in the world. Then they added some kind of goofy taillights, but it's basically a 62 Chrysler for the 62 Dodge 880. I mean, these were stopgap measures at best. Keep in mind at the time, it took like 3 or 4 years to bring out a new design. So like changing a design in the middle of the year was a big deal. But what happened was it came out, in the second half of the year, the 62 Dodge 880, and Dodge had a full-size car and everything was a little bit better. So 63 had a little bit of a styling update. Here's a nice picture of that. They had a little bit more time to kind of get their act together on that. But it was basically on the same body, which was introduced in 1960. And these are unibody cars. So from the firewall back, they're one piece. Then they have a front stub on them, which basically bolts on, and the whole front suspension and engine all sit on that. And then there were 2 wheelbases on these cars. So this is what was called a short wheelbase car. So the 62 Chrysler 300 was on a short wheelbase. The Newport was on a short wheelbase, and then the long wheelbase were the New Yorker. So for example, on this 1960 New Yorker, that's a long wheelbase car. The 300F was a long wheelbase. The 300G was a long wheelbase. The 62 300H was actually the short wheelbase car. And basically the difference in wheelbase was behind the fender. But like you look at these two cars, they're basically on the same platform. They just, the New Yorker has a longer nose than the 80 on that. It's kind of interesting. But see how much more room there is on the fender there? That's where they extended it, the area back there. So the actual car wasn't any bigger. They just made a bigger nose on it. Okay, again, and in the life cycle of cars, it took them 3 years to figure this out. So in 65, they were coming out with the brand new C-bodies, which was basically a clean sheet design, and they were very well designed cars, and basically stayed the same until 73 for the most part. But in 64, they still had the 880. So they had a bunch more, minor design changes on these. But they really ended up being a fairly good looking car, considering it was a very stopgap measure, and they basically had to use existing tooling. The doors are the same as 62 Chrysler. The rear window's the same. It's remarkably the same, the roof, but, you know, they changed the quarter panels. You know, they had to gingerbread them up a little bit to make them look a little bit different. So it wasn't, you know, the same car for 4 years. But all right, which brings us to our example car here. 1964 Dodge 80 California Highway Patrol car. So I know the term Holy Grail is thrown around way too much in the Mopar hobby. I mean, I'm sick of it. Like, it is not a good word. And yet I'm going to use it right here. So this is basically, CHP was kind of considered the king of police agencies. They ordered the most cars, and they ordered enough cars. I mean, they ordered a couple thousand cars a year. They ordered enough stuff where Chrysler spec'd their cars out unique to them. I mean, for example, like they would set up the suspension differently for them because CHP put a push bumper on all their cars, which added, you know, 20-30 pounds to the front of the car, and they would actually set up the torsion bars differently on a CHP car than they would any other car. You know, they got the dual spotlights. There was a lot of unique stuff they did on these. Another little interesting quiz is the 62 Dodge 880 has a 122-inch wheelbase. Do you know why it has a 122-inch wheelbase? By the way, same thing with the 65 C bodies, because CHP had a minimum wheelbase of 122. So when they designed these cars, they designed it around that CHP, it met the specs. Because, I mean, you know, 2,000 cars a year, 2,000 plus cars a year was a big deal. You know, any car manufacturer, they would, you know, twist themselves around to do that. And when CHP ordered a certain car, other agencies followed too. So they would get significant fleet business from this when they met those specs. Okay, so your next question. What constitutes a police package? So, well, there's a lot of different things that's on a police package. First of all, you got 15x6 wheels, and they actually have, so see those tangs there? They actually had hubcaps that went inside there, which we have, I think there's some in the trunk here. Oh no, they're on the front seat. So this was part of the police package. So they had these very unique hubcaps, and this is kind of a throwback to a previous era. You know, the 30s, 40s, 50s cars, trucks, you know, they used the hubcaps that were on the inside instead that went over the nubs on the wheel. And I don't know, I think they're a pretty good looking hubcap. They actually use these all the way up through 68, which is kind of crazy, just on fleet cars. All right, police package cars. Another unique thing to CHP is they actually got white steering wheels, because with black steering wheels, you would burn your hand. On a police package car, and at least in 1964, you had a 9 in the VIN. So 5 is Dodge 880, 9 is actually police package. 4 is the year, 1964, 3 is the plant, and then 274, 186 is the serial number. Here's the fender tag right here for those who care. Fortunately, I do not have these memorized, so I can, the 69 to 71 ones I can pretty much do by heart. I don't have these memorized, so, but there's a lot of cool codes on here. So 614 right there is the SPD, so scheduled production date, which would be June 14th. I know the K2A right here is the interior code. K is police grade vinyl, so it was a little tougher than other vinyl would be. The PNT on the right, the 99, is special order paint. So they had two-tone paint, obviously black body with a white roof and a white door. The body 593, that's the body number. So the 5 is the first two of the VIN, the 59, and then I think 3 is the plant. I could be wrong about that. All right, I'm gonna stop decoding that before I get in trouble and make a mistake someone's gonna point out. On a police package, you got a certified speedometer. Actually kind of cool. I love these dashes. So certified speedometer on each side. And, you know, especially in California, they couldn't use radar at the time, so they had to pace people to pull them over. So they had to have that to write a ticket, to pace someone. If you're behind them, you know, they're going 70, you're going 70, and the speed limit was 55, you had to have a certified speedometer, or else it'd be thrown out in court. These have radio deletes in them. You still could get a radio in a police package car, but not on this one. They had extra reinforcements. They had reinforcements in the roof. Obviously, you can't see it here because, you know, headliner. And then they usually had some reinforcements in the back too. Let me show you some more unique CHP stuff. So I'm kind of mixing up police package and CHP here. I kind of meant to do a moment at a time, but, you know, I kind of wing these. This is where we're at. Okay, I just want to say up front, one thing we're not going to do in this video is get this thing running. So Jamie from Dead Dodge Garage, he actually started working on this thing last week, and the motor currently is stuck. He did lube the cylinders down with diesel, which is not something he usually does, but that's why some of this stuff's apart. It looks like somebody actually put new components in that distributor. I actually found out, I looked up the numbers on this distributor. It's actually not right for the car. It's for a 68 444 speed, which is actually kind of cool because I have one, a 68 Sport Fury. I may end up selling that distributor for my car. Although I have one for it, I think that one has a little closer date code. So that's not the right distributor for the car. I believe this should have a dual point tach drive tachometer, which is what they used on the high performance 64s, because a lot of those cars came with tachs. The 64 Polaris with a 426 street wedge or max wedge would come with a tach on the consoles. They'd have a tach drive, so I'm pretty sure they all had tach drives. So, all right, more police package stuff. Max cooling. So this is a unique rubber piece here. Again, what you want is you want all that air going through the radiator, so none of it goes around, because then it cools better. They have a metal fan shroud with a 5-blade fan. Whee! I'm pretty sure on this one they had a Lease Novell alternator, although I'm not 100% sure about that. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure they had a Lease Novell on these rather than a factory Mopar one. The engine's unique, so it says it is V41. So V is the year, which is 1964. I don't know why V64, but it is. 41 means 413, and then 510 HP. So, and I believe the only way you could get a HP 413 in 64 was in a 1964 300K. And that was the 4-barrel K. There was Ram Ks too, but their stampings were a little bit different. So unique motor, very cool. I've been told that some of these were built on the Marine line because they were kind of specialized. So that's kind of cool. You know, it's a very unique motor on this. And, you know, there weren't any HP manifolds here at the time or anything like that. It still has log manifolds, so they didn't really have any other options at the time. But, you know, police package motor, you know, you could only get that in here. I don't think this is something you could order just on a civilian. 64 880, you could have a police package. It's got the small air cleaner, same as, you know, a bunch of stuff use that. Commando, you know, any of the earlier 4-barrels use that air cleaner, but it's kind of cool. It's unsilenced, small one, doesn't restrict any power. Another really unique thing on here, I think I pointed this out in one of Jamie's videos, but one really unique part about these is the front suspension package. So see that bracket down there? Right down there with the sway bar. That was an optional sway bar that's actually extremely rare. So that was on police package cars. It was only on short wheelbase cars. So all the long wheelbase cars, I believe, got sway bars, so their brackets were welded on. But that's the extremely desirable package. So any 6061 DeSoto, Dodge, or Plymouth that was a factory Ram car, you know, the big intakes that go to either side on them, they had the sway bar package with bigger torsion bars. Any police package had it. 62300H had it. 63300J. And then the 64 300Ks, but only the Ram cars came with that suspension package. And I'll tell you what, it really transforms the way these things handle. They handle so much better with that front sway bar and the extra heavy duty torsion bars. It really transforms them. So if you ever see those brackets on a car, always grab them if you ever find them, because they're extremely hard to find and extremely rare. And very desirable. Anyone who wants to make a Ram car clone or clean up their handling on their 63, 64, that's what you want. And again, and this stuff interchanges all the way back to 60. Basically 60, 64 on these, all the short wheelbase cars are basically the same. Another police package piece here. It's a heat shield for the battery. They want to keep the heat off that because these cars were, you know, idling and sitting for long periods of time, and, you know, they want to be able to cool them off a little bit. It really helped. So, okay, so some specific CHP stuff under the hood here. So that hole right there, they mounted the siren back there. So they actually drilled a hole through there so they could have the siren, so they could hear it go through there. So they mounted it right back there. This one has engine block heater and all that stuff. That's from where this car came from. This came from kind of central Montana. Good buddy of mine, Matt, back there. He owns Jameson Motors in Chinook, Montana. I love that dealer. It's so awesome. They're small town dealer back there. They've been in business since the 20s. Super nice guys. He's a super nice dude. He's really good at finding stuff back there. So apparently he got this out of his state in near Great Falls, Montana. And then we did some trading on that Superbird estate sale I got a couple weeks ago. He got a couple of the Imperials from there, and he traded me this because he knows I like cop cars. So I was gonna end up with this one anyways. It's the right radiator right there. Another interesting CHP thing here is that's the unit number right there. They actually painted them on the front of the hood and the deck lid. So I believe that's 88562. I believe that's the same. Unfortunately, hood molding and the letters are missing. But the nice part is 64 Dodge 880 parts are pretty cheap because they really didn't make any performance ones. They really didn't make any of them that were that interesting except for the lease package cars. They made a few 4-speed ones, but they're pretty rare. There's the unit number again on the back, and that would have said I think it said Highway Patrol on the deck lid. I don't know, some CHP guy will correct me on that, but I believe it said that. These had whip antennas. That was a CHP thing. So the whip antenna mounted right here. And then they had a whip antenna that went all the way up here and went through the drip rail. So that's one thing you always look for on these cars. See if it's real CHP. So see the hole right there? That's where they pinned the whip antenna to. So it went all the way up, across, and down. And then it could get a nice good signal when it was way up in the air there. So they could go long distances. Because, you know, obviously no cell phones in 1964. That was the only way to communicate. CHP had 2 flashing lights in the rear deck. So see those holes right there? So a lot of people ask me when they saw this car, like, well, how do you know it's a CHP car? Well, you know, I know it's not supposed to be on a CHP car, and this has all the marks of it. You know, they did not have light bars on these. I don't know why. Maybe that was for aerodynamic reasons. But all they had single red spots. They call it the burning red spot. So when they tried to pull you over, the siren went on. They put the spotlight in your rear view mirror, pointed it right at you. Then they had the 2 deck lights too, and that's pretty much all they had for emergency lights. Brownie I just found. Super good. So I'm sure most of you watching this know how to do this, but if you don't have a trunk key for your car, all you have to do is pop the lock out on a Mopar, and you put a flathead screwdriver in there. And then if you look right in there, there's a slot on the latch that always works. So you stick Mr. Flathead through the hole, twist it, pops right open. Trunk's fairly clean on this. Unfortunately, someone put shag carpeting in here, which is really annoying because basically all the rust here is from shag carpeting. They got wet over the years, and you know, here you go. It's interesting. They actually had cardboard liner in the trunk. You would have thought they would have deleted that on a CHP car. That must have been all of them. There's a little vestige of the shag carpeting. They put self-drilling screws to keep that on. There's the jack instructions over there. And another interesting thing on CHP cars, they actually moved the spare. So on normal 880, the spare was up in the middle right there. On a convertible, they put it over here because they had to have room for the top to go down. Well, CHP actually had their spares in the convertible area because to clear the radio equipment. They put the radios up there instead of that. Washington State Patrol did that too. They usually had a wood shelf over on that side where they mounted their trunk radio equipment. And because back then it was all tube stuff, so it was very heavy stuff. So they had to mount it in the trunk right over there. So kind of interesting. See, nice original paint black underneath there. So this would have had an emblem on the trunk right there in the middle. I believe it said 880. So I'm gonna have to see if I can find one of those. But again, parts for these aren't super expensive or hard to find. I need to go on eBay and like see what's available NOS for this thing. I love that Dodge logo. They use that all the way through 7071. The Dodge, I know the 70 Dodge Dart still use that thing. Taillights are a little burnt. You know, the advantage of being in Great Falls area, Montana, is it's just east of the Continental Divide. Cars are really nice there. Sometimes they'll get some damage from gravel roads from being in Montana or from sand, from snow and stuff, but it doesn't rain there. Cars are usually really, really clean. But all the plastic just gets wasted. The sun's just brutal out there. It's constant. Here's the gas filler. It's up right there. Oh, it's locking. Oh, great. I don't think I have a key. Fantastic. Well, just have to drill that out. I'm sure the gas tank's probably toast anyways. Put the reverse lights in the bumper right there. Big Sky Country. Last tab is 88. Yeah, I really wish we'd get this thing fired up, but the engine's still locked up on this thing, and as I said, we're gonna let it soak for a week or two and see if we can get it free. And if we get it fired up, watch Jamie's video. He'll do a video on it. Another unique thing to the police package is they actually had heavier duty alternator gauges. That's your different part number on those. Speedos were all 120 for all of them. Some of the later cars, for example, my 72 Dodge Polara, the civilian speedometer was 120, and the cop one was actually 140. So you actually got a unique one. I think Jamie's putting junk on my front seat again. Awesome, thanks Jamie. Door panels have seen better days. Unfortunately, one of the only sources for that is a company called SMS in Portland, and they're one of the worst customer service companies I've ever met in my life. They are horrible. They've had door panels for my brother's 64 Dodge 330. Yeah, 330. Washington State Patrol car. They've had it for 5 years and they haven't gotten them back to us yet. So hopefully one day they get them back to us. Send a mirror there at some point. I'll have to find one of those. Obviously windshield's cracked, needs wipers. You know, it needs some parts, but I mean, the biggest part of the battle on these is just having clean bodies, and this body is so clean. I mean, there's hardly any rust in it at all. You know, I'll expect probably a little bit in the floor pans because you see that rubber floor mats and they had that insulation on there, and the insulation always held water in, and they always rusted because the insulation would get wet and there's nowhere for it to go because it's rubber. So it would just stay wet and just rust out. But I mean, look at these quarter panels. I mean, this thing is really, really nice. I mean, obviously it started out in California. So I mean, that's a good place to start out. Then ended up somewhere in Great Falls, Montana. That's a pretty good spot. You know, real common rust spot on these was the rockers in front of the quarters. And there's nothing on this thing. This thing is super clean. Wish I could see what that sticker said. I'm sure it probably had something interesting on there. You know, roof's starting to get a little faded. And I'll tell you what, like most of this flash rust has happened since I got home in the last month. It didn't have that when I left Montana. It's so dry down there. I've got a sports satellite in the backyard of 70 that I got from Matt. And dude, that thing was bare metal when it came here. It didn't rust. But you can really see how clean this thing is. It is really, really clean. If you know me, you know I geek out for little details like this. I love this. There's multiple paint okay stickers on there, stamps, and that's from some inspector at the plant. And then it still has the grease stampings on the valve cover. Super, super cool. Another interesting thing is I was actually doing some research online. So I can't even remember exactly what's supposed to be here on an 880. There's some sort of like, I think there's a Dodge thing that's set up, but I've actually seen pictures of 62 CHP car, or sorry, 64 Dodge 880s in service, and that's actually what they look like. So I don't know if CHP did that. They just put a cap on it. I don't know if they wanted the Dodge emblem sitting up. I don't know if it was drag. I don't know if it was just like, they just didn't want those on the fenders to advertise Dodge. But I've actually seen some in-service pictures of 64 880s with that little nut on it. So that's a little modification that I'm sure CHP did in the back in the day for whatever reason. All right, well, I'm starting to run out of daylight here, so I should probably wrap this up. I've been rambling on enough, and I know this one's a little detail-oriented episode from Rocket here, but I hope you enjoy this. I love nerding out on this stuff because I think it's really interesting. You know, how they built, you know, police package cars were very special cars. You know, how they built them, the options, you know, the combination. Like, they were really, I mean, if you could civilian order one of these were fantastic cars. You had the biggest engine, you had the best suspension, you had the best brakes. Yeah, I forgot even the brakes. I didn't even mention that. This thing's got 11x3s on the front. I mean, it has ginormous front brakes that the regular civilian cars didn't get. Big brakes on the back. Like, these things are just great. They're good driving cars. They stop well. You know, obviously no disc brakes yet, but the 11x3 drums work really well. You know, unless you're towing going down a pass, these things were fantastic. Oh, by the way, I know I'm gonna get a question about this. No, the New York was not for sale. It already sold. Yeah, that's a cool car, but it already sold. Back to the 6480. So yeah, as you all know, I'm a cop car guy. So plans with this. I'm really hoping we can get the motor running. If I can get the motor running on this, we're gonna start going for it. You know, I'm probably gonna get the seats done, probably get the brakes done, and just, you know, go through the gas tank, see if we can get this thing running. I love police cars. These things drive great. I think they look really cool. I'll start ordering some parts for it. If the motor's stuck, we're probably gonna have to pull it and rebuild it because I mean, honestly, I think my brother kind of wants this one. He's been kind of whining to me that he wants this thing, even though I found it, but whatever. So I think my brother may end up with it, even though he already has another 64 Dodge WSP car in their shop that he hasn't touched for 5 years, but I digress. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, even if the motor's stuck, this is definitely a worthy car to get done. So I think that's kind of the plan. We're gonna, you know, have to probably pull the drivetrain if the motor's stuck to get it apart. But I don't know, maybe I'll put it on the lift, maybe I'll pull the oil pan, maybe see if we can get the caps below it, maybe see if we can get the, see what cylinder's stuck, maybe pull some pistons out from the bottom. We'll see how crazy we get with this thing, but that might be a good episode, you know, trying to figure out how to unstuck a motor. So, all right, well, this is Tom from Rocket Restorations. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you found this interesting, and we will talk to you soon.